They didn't fight him. They didn't resist. They didn't attack. They didn't run. They begged. Demons, ancient, powerful, terrifying spiritual entities that had tormented a man so completely that no chain could hold him. No prison could contain him. No human force on earth could stop him. Fell to their knees and begged Jesus not to send them somewhere. Think about that for 1 second. These are beings that had driven a man out of his mind. Beings that had given him supernatural strength. Beings that made him cut himself with stones in the middle of the night, howling among the tombs like something that had stopped being human a long time ago. These are not weak forces. These are not small, scared little spirits. And they begged, not for mercy in the way we think of mercy. Not, please don't destroy us. Not, please let us go. They begged for something specific. Something that tells us more about the nature of spiritual reality than almost anything else in the entire Bible. They begged to go into pigs. Now, if you've heard this story before, you might have filed it away as one of those strange biblical moments. Weird. Interesting. Moving on. But I want to stop you right there. Because if you move on, you miss everything. Because the real question, the question that should keep you up at night, is not why they went into the pigs. It's what they were so desperately trying to avoid. What place, what destination, what fate was so terrifying to beings that had terrorized an entire region, that they chose pigs over it? That's what this video is about. And I promise you, by the end, this story won't just be a strange Bible account. It's going to say something directly to your life. Something about fear. Something about control. Something about what we hold on to even when it's destroying us. Let's go. To understand what happened that day, you need to feel it, not just know it. Feel it. Picture the Sea of Galilee at dawn. The water is still. The boat carrying Jesus and his disciples has just crossed through a storm, a violent, terrifying storm that Jesus silenced with 3 words. The disciples are already shaken, already questioning who this man actually is. What kind of person commands weather and it obeys? They don't have time to process it. Because the moment the boat scrapes against the shore on the other side, the eastern shore, the region of the Gerasenes, something comes at them out of the darkness. Mark's gospel describes it with the kind of detail that feels like an eyewitness account. A man, coming from the tombs, he lived among the dead, not by choice, because no choice remained to him. He had been driven there, chained there, in the attempts of people to contain him, and the chains didn't hold. The Bible says he had torn apart every chain, every shackle. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and in the hills, he cried out. He cut himself with stones. This is not poetic language. This is a portrait of complete destruction. A human being so completely overtaken by something outside himself that everything recognizable about him was gone. His name, his home, his family, his mind, all of it, consumed. And this is the thing that comes running at Jesus the moment he steps off the boat. Now, what would you do? What would any sane person do? Run. Get back in the boat. Sail away. Leave immediately. Any rational response involves not being there anymore. But Jesus doesn't move. He stands on that shore, and he watches this man, this vessel of darkness, running toward him at full speed. And then something happens that should stop you completely. The man, or whatever was speaking through him, falls to his knees in front of Jesus. He bows, not in worship, in terror, in the recognition of something so overwhelming, so completely superior, that the only possible response is to fall down. And then the voice comes. What do you want with me, Jesus? Son of the Most High God, swear to God that you won't torture me. Swear to God. A demon. Invoking God, asking Jesus to make a divine oath, not to destroy them, not to cast them out, but not to torture them. There's something almost unbearable about this moment, because in that single sentence we learn something extraordinary. Demons know exactly who Jesus is. No confusion, no uncertainty. While the Pharisees are debating whether Jesus is from God or from the devil, the demons are falling at his feet and calling him the Son of the Most High God. They know, and they are terrified. But why? What specifically are they afraid of? Jesus asks a question, a simple question, 3 words. What is your name? And the answer that comes back should make the hair on your arms stand up. My name is Legion, for we are many. Legion. In the Roman world, a legion was a military unit of approximately 6,000 soldiers. 6,000. And that word, that specific word, is what these beings chose to describe themselves. Not we are many, not there are a lot of us. Legion, an army, a force, an occupying power within one human body. Think about what that means for that man. 6,000 presences, 6,000 voices, 6,000 wills driving him into the darkness, into the tombs, away from every human connection, away from everything that made life livable. And now, they're all on their knees, all of them, thousands of them, falling before one man standing on a shoreline in the early morning. But here's the thing that most people miss. Here's the moment where the real story begins. The demons don't just beg Jesus not to destroy them. They beg him not to send them somewhere specific. Luke's gospel makes it crystal clear. They begged Jesus repeatedly. The original Greek implies urgency, persistence, desperation, not to order them to go into the abyss. The abyss, that word, that single word, that's the key to everything. Because whatever the abyss is, it's something that an army of 6,000 demons considers worse than any other option available to them. Worse than being destroyed. Worse than being cast out. Worse than anything Jesus might do to them on that shoreline. The abyss terrifies them more. So what is it? The word in the Greek is abyssus, the bottomless place, the deep. In the theology of the ancient world, both Jewish and early Christian, the abyss is not just a poetic image. It's a specific place, a prison, a place of confinement and torment reserved for spiritual beings who have gone beyond a certain boundary. The book of Revelation references it, a place so deep, so sealed, that it takes an angel with a special key to open it. Jude references it. Angels who abandoned their proper domain, kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains for judgment. Peter references it. Spiritual beings cast into Tartarus, held there, waiting. This is a real destination in the biblical cosmology of the spirit world, and it is specifically a place of confinement, of being locked away, of no longer being able to act, to influence, to roam, to torment, for beings whose entire existence is about inhabiting, controlling, destroying. The abyss is the worst possible fate. Not because it's painful in the way we think of pain, but because it's the end of everything they do, the end of their power, the end of their presence in this world. They weren't afraid of pigs. They were afraid of being removed from the game entirely. And that tells us something massive about what they actually are and what they actually want. They want to be here, in this world, among people. They want access. They want influence. They need somewhere to go, something to inhabit, something to drive toward destruction. The realm of the spirit, without embodiment, without a host, without a place in the physical world. For them, it's intolerable. So when Jesus showed up with the full authority to send them to the one place they could never escape from, never manipulate their way out of, they panicked, and they started negotiating. Send us into the pigs. There was a large herd of pigs feeding on the nearby hillside. 2,000 pigs, Mark tells us. 2,000, and the demons asked to go there. Now, here's where this story gets even more layered. Because in Jewish culture, in the world Jesus was walking in, pigs were not just animals. They were the symbol of everything unclean, everything that a faithful Jewish person would not touch, would not eat, would not go near. Pigs were associated with Roman occupation, with Gentile culture, with impurity. And here is this herd of 2,000 pigs on Jewish-adjacent land near a Jewish community. Some scholars read this moment as profoundly symbolic. The unclean spirits going into the unclean animals, the impurity finding its natural home. But there's something darker here too. Because the demons went into the pigs, and immediately the entire herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and drowned. 2,000 pigs, all of them, gone. And here's a question that doesn't get asked enough. Why did that happen? The demons asked to go into the pigs. Jesus permitted it. So why did they immediately destroy their new host? Was it an accident? Was it beyond their control? Or was it something more revealing than that? I think it shows us exactly what these forces do everywhere they go. Every single time, without exception, they destroy. It's not a strategy. It's not a choice. It's their nature. The moment they had a host, any host, the outcome was destruction. 2,000 pigs, a cliff, a lake, total annihilation, in less than a minute. And the man they had been inhabiting for years, the one they had been destroying slowly, cutting him with stones, driving him into the tombs, stripping away his humanity piece by piece. That was always where it was going too. They just had more time with him. Now let me slow down and bring you back to the man himself. Because in the drama of the demons begging, and the pigs running, and the herdsmen fleeing into the town, the man in the middle of all this can get forgotten. And he should not be forgotten, because what happens to him is the center of the entire story. The townspeople come running out. They'd heard about this man. They'd tried to chain him. They knew what he was, or what he had become. They come out expecting to find chaos, and they find him, sitting, dressed, in his right mind, sitting, dressed, in his right mind. 3 details, 3 small details that carry an entire world inside them. Sitting, because he no longer needed to run. The compulsion, the restlessness, the driving force that had made stillness impossible, gone. Dressed, because dignity had been returned to him. Whoever he was before the tombs, before the chains, before the howling in the night, that person was coming back, in his right mind, because his mind was his again. The thousands of voices, the alien wills driving him toward destruction, the noise, all of it, gone. Silence, peace, clarity, and the townspeople were afraid, not relieved, not celebrating, afraid. Isn't that something? The most terrifying thing this community had ever faced, a man so dangerous no chain could hold him, had been healed. Completely. Instantly. And the reaction was fear. Why? Because what Jesus did that morning was so far outside anything they had a category for, so completely beyond their understanding of how the world works, that it was easier to be afraid of it than to accept what it meant. Jesus had authority over the things that were supposed to be uncontrollable, And that was terrifying to people who had built their lives around accepting that some things just can't be fixed. They asked him to leave, and he did. But before he left, the man who had just had his life restored, ran to the boat. He wanted to go with Jesus. Of course he did. If the man who healed you is getting in a boat and sailing away, you want to be in that boat. You want to never let him out of your sight. You want to be as close to him as possible for the rest of your life. And Jesus said no. He told him to go home, to his family, to tell them what God had done for him. And the man went, and he told everyone. In all 10 cities of the Decapolis region, he couldn't stop. The Bible says everyone who heard it was amazed. Think about the trajectory of that life. Years in the tombs, years of chains and darkness and isolation and self-destruction. And then a morning on a shoreline. And then everything changed. Not gradually, not slowly over time with a lot of work. In a morning, because one person showed up with the authority to say enough. And the darkness had no choice but to obey. Now here's where I want to take you somewhere deeper, because this story is not just about a man in first-century Galilee, and it's not just about demons and pigs and a lake. This story is about authority. Specifically, what authority looks like when it's absolute, when it doesn't negotiate on equal terms, when it doesn't fight on the same level as the thing it's confronting. The demons didn't beg Jesus because they thought they might be able to change his mind. They begged because they recognized that they had no power here. None. The one who stood in front of them operated on a completely different level of reality. They could resist chains. They could resist human force. They could not resist him. And that's the question I want to plant in your mind right now. If you believe any of this, if this story points to something real about the nature of spiritual authority, then what does it mean for the things in your life that feel uncontrollable? The patterns that no amount of willpower can break. The fears that have been running your decisions for years. The voices that tell you who you are at 3 a.m, when everything is quiet. Because here's what the demons demonstrated that morning, without meaning to. They showed us the exact limit of their power. They could drive a man to the tombs. They could give him supernatural strength. They could make him cut himself with stones. They could strip away everything recognizable about him. But when Jesus showed up, they fell to their knees and started negotiating. That's not power. That's performance. It's terrifying performance, but it has a ceiling. And the ceiling is the authority of the one who created everything that exists, including them. But let me push further, because I think there's something in this story specifically about fear that we need to sit with. The demons were afraid, genuinely, completely, desperately afraid. And fear, even in the most powerful entities, does something very specific. It makes you negotiate. It makes you grab for the nearest available option. It makes you choose something you know is wrong because the alternative seems worse. They chose pigs. They chose 2,000 animals that they would immediately destroy. They chose a short-term escape from the thing they feared most. And the moment they entered those animals, they ran off a cliff. Fear as a navigation system leads you off cliffs, every single time. And here's where this becomes personal, devastatingly, uncomfortably personal. How many decisions have you made out of fear? Not courage, not wisdom, not genuine choice. Fear. The fear of what happens if you don't stay in the relationship that's destroying you. The fear of what people will think if you change. The fear of the unknown being worse than the known, even when the known is the tombs. Even when the known is chains. Even when the known is cutting yourself on the stones of the same patterns, the same failures, the same cycles, over and over again. The man in that story had been in the tombs so long he might have forgotten there was anywhere else to live. Have you forgotten? What are you holding on to out of fear, even when it's destroying you? I want you to actually sit with that question. Don't let your mind immediately deflect to something comfortable. Sit in it, because maybe it's not a dramatic possession. Maybe it's not chains and tombs and supernatural strength. Maybe it's quieter than that. Maybe it's the voice that tells you you're not enough, that you've never been enough, that even if things changed, you'd find a way to ruin it. Maybe it's the relationship you stay in because leaving feels like the abyss, even though staying is the cliff. Maybe it's the addiction that at least feels like something when everything else feels like nothing. Maybe it's the identity you've built around your brokenness, because being broken is familiar, and being healed would require becoming someone you don't know how to be yet. Familiar destruction versus unfamiliar freedom. The demons chose familiar. They chose pigs. They ran off a cliff. And the man who was left behind, sitting, dressed, in his right mind, he got to go home. What would it mean for you to go home? Here's what this story does not say. It does not say the man earned it. It does not say he had done enough spiritual work to deserve healing. It does not say he had figured out the right theology, or said the right prayer, or cleaned himself up enough to approach Jesus. He came running at him from the tombs, wild, naked, screaming, broken beyond recognition, and Jesus stood there. Jesus didn't get back in the boat. Jesus didn't wait until the man was more presentable. Jesus didn't say, "Go get your life together and then come back and we'll talk." He stood on that shore and he addressed what was inside the man directly. Commanding, authoritative, absolute. Come out of him, and it came out. Because whatever you believe about the mechanics of this, whatever your theology, whatever your background, that image of Jesus standing on a shore while something terrifying runs toward him and not moving, not flinching, speaking with absolute authority into the most chaotic situation imaginable. That image is the whole gospel in one scene. The God who doesn't run, the God who doesn't wait for you to be fixed before he comes toward you, the God who is not intimidated by your chaos, who is not repelled by your darkness, who is not confused by your complexity, who looks at the worst version of what you've become and sees the person who can be sitting, clothed, in their right mind, and who has the authority to make it happen. Now let me bring you back to the demons one more time, because there's one more thing they reveal, one more thing they show us by accident, that I don't want you to miss. They asked Jesus for permission. They didn't just go into the pigs. They asked first. They negotiated. They waited for his answer. Why does that matter? Because it tells us that nothing in the spiritual realm operates outside of Jesus' authority. Nothing acts without ultimately coming under his jurisdiction. Even the forces of darkness, even Legion, 6,000 strong, could not make a single move without his permission. They asked. He answered. They went. The pigs ran. The man was free. Every single step of that story was under his control. Not in a way that makes evil meaningless or human suffering irrelevant. That's a much bigger conversation. But in a way that should fundamentally change how you think about the darkness in your own life. About the things that feel uncontrollable, about the powers that seem too strong to overcome. Nothing operates outside his authority. Nothing. And here's the final piece that gets me, the part that I keep coming back to every time I read this story. After it was all over, after the demons were gone, and the pigs were drowned, and the man was healed, and the crowd was afraid, and Jesus was getting back in the boat. The townspeople asked him to leave. They asked the most powerful, most healing, most authoritative person who had ever set foot in their region to please go away, because he had disrupted the economy. The pigs were gone. 2,000 pigs. That's money. That's livelihood. That's practical, real-world loss. And apparently that loss was more disturbing to them than the gain of one man's freedom. One man's complete, total, miraculous restoration was not worth 2,000 pigs to them. I don't say this to condemn them. I say this because I recognize it. I recognize the impulse to weigh the cost of transformation against the comfort of how things are. To decide that the disruption required for something new isn't worth what it would cost in familiar structures, familiar arrangements, familiar ways of managing the world. How often do we ask Jesus to leave? Not in those words, but in the way we close the door on the parts of our lives that would have to change, in the way we prefer the manageable darkness to the disruptive light, in the way we choose the known chains over the unknown freedom. The townspeople went back to their town. The man went into his, healed, restored, full of a story that nobody could dismiss because they all knew who he had been. And Jesus sailed away. He doesn't force himself in, he never does, but he also never stops showing up on shorelines. So here's where I leave you. 2,000 years ago, on the eastern shore of the Sea of Galilee, a man who had been living in tombs was set free in the time it takes to say 3 words. An army of darkness fell on its knees and begged. And what they were begging not to face, the abyss, the place of no return, the end of their access to this world, tells us everything we need to know about what they actually are. They are not invincible. They are not permanent. They have a ceiling. They have limits. They have things they are terrified of. And the one who sets those limits was standing on a beach, completely unbothered, waiting for a broken man to reach him. That same authority hasn't changed. That same God hasn't moved. That same shoreline, the place where you stop running and fall down in front of something bigger than everything that's been driving you, is still available. You don't have to have it together. You don't have to be clean. You don't have to approach quietly and politely. You can come from the tombs. You can come screaming. You can come with every chain that couldn't hold you still rattling behind you. He's not going back in the boat. If this video moved you, share it. Not for the numbers. Because someone in your life is living in their own tombs right now. Someone who has been in the darkness so long they can't remember what light felt like. Someone who needs to know that the authority that silenced a Roman legion of demons is the same authority available to them, right now, in whatever they're facing. And in the comments, tell me, what is your abyss? What is the thing you're so afraid of that you'd negotiate for pigs instead? Because maybe naming it is the first step to the shore. You don't have to stay in the tombs.